Hi, welcome to my story number 21. In 1970, I became a teenager. Now there were sweet and bitter things about becoming a teenager and dealing with that surge of testosterone through my body. My muscles finally started to develop. Sweet. But then I started to get acne, pimples, bitter. My voice broke. Sweet. But I developed a terrible temper. Bitter. You see, when you are a teenage boy, you want to be cool. You don't want to be flying off the handle at the slightest thing. There was this guy at school called Whitaker. He wanted to join our group, and he thought the way to do it was to push me aside and put me down. One day he said something. I don't remember what it was, but rather than being cool, a rage built up within me, like a volcano. I grabbed him by the scruff of the neck. I placed my right foot behind his and gave an almighty push towards the stairwell. He flew head over turkey down the stairs. I then went to jump on his chest when my mates grabbed me and said, "Hey, cool it. What are you wanting to do? Kill him?" Not a bad outcome, I thought. But afterwards it scared me what my rage could do. This teenage temper could cause me all sorts of problems. In 1970, my foster brothers, Big Mike and Wayne, left Ruhamah when their mum remarried and again set up home. Big Mike, Bobo and I had been the Three Musketeers. We had forged so many memories together. I would miss Big Mike. Bitter. But hey, now I wouldn't have to see all the girls push past me to fall over him, to have his sporting and academic achievements eclipse mine. Sweet. I soon realised, though, that the problem when it came to girls wasn't Big Mike. No, I just didn't have what it took. When I met a pretty girl, I either spoke so much or just couldn't get a word out. Despite leaving Ruhamah, Big Mike would often come to visit us. Each time he did, he would regale us with stories of the girls he met and his continuing sporting and academic achievements. One night in 1972, he came around when my parents and the older boys were out, and Bobo and I had been left in charge. Again, Big Mike was telling us his stories when he said something about Sherelle, the girl I spoke about in story number 20. He said something that I interpreted, probably wrongly, as not very complimentary. That old rage built up inside me again, and I took offence on her behalf, and so said some very uncomplimentary things to Big Mike. And soon we were toe-to-toe, nose-to-nose, trading insults. "So you want to take this outside, do you?" said Big Mike. "Sure," I replied. And so we headed out the door to fight it out. When we got out into the backyard, Big Mike said, "You throw the first punch, because when Mum comes home and sees you crying, I want to say that you started it." "No, you throw the first punch, because you did start it." And soon we were arguing about that, when all of a sudden the door in the fence of the backyard opened, and my mother, father, and the older boys walked in. My mother's eyes lit up as soon as she saw Big Mike. "Oh, Michael, you handsome boy, you've come to visit me. Tell me what you have been up to." And they walked arm in arm back to the house. "Hey,
"What are you guys doing out in the backyard?"
asked Peter as he walked by.
"Fighting," I said. "Fighting? You couldn't fight your way out of a wet paper bag."
"He's right," said Bobo. "You're lucky they all turned up when they did. What was I doing? Why would I get into a fight that I had no hope of winning over a girl that I didn't even have the courage to ask out?" So that night, I decided that I would ask her out. My plan was to turn up to church at night. I often didn't go to church at night, but I knew that she did. I would make a point of sitting with her, and then I'd ask her out. When I got there, though, she was nowhere in sight. And soon I was told to get inside and get a seat. This is hopeless, I thought. Now I have to sit through a whole church service. After the first hymn, however, I heard her come in. She was with someone and they sat in the seats behind me. I coolly turned around and said, "G'day." But to my horror, I saw that she was sitting very close to and holding hands with a guy called Ian. Ian, 3 years older than me, 4 years older than her, with a job, earning money, and with a car, more mature. What did he have that I didn't have? Oh, what chance did I have? I was out of my league. I sulked back home that night. Nothing was working out for me. There seemed to be more bitter than sweet in my life. Where was I going? What was going to become of me? Being a teenager sucked. Sometimes people ask the question, what advice would you give your teenage self? Well, in order to answer that, let me tell you that there was a time recorded in the Bible when the Jews, the people who were called God's people, were in a real mess. They had lost a war, their country was occupied, and most of them had been exiled to another foreign country, far from their home. No doubt they too were very confused, wondering why this was all happening to them, thinking that their lives sucked. Then God, through his prophet Jeremiah, told them this: "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." So now I think the advice I would give to my teenage self would be, don't panic. God has plans to give you a hope and a future. But unfortunately, as a young teenager, listening to God wasn't my highest priority. So I was missing out on the hope and future that he was offering. See you in story number 22.